On the formation lap, when they say to the drivers, lift and coast into turn 12 or whatever.
Mostly it's a cooling thing on the formation lap.
Okay.
So the engine get pretty hot going at slow speed. So what you'll do is the driver will push a certain other way around, depending on obviously what the leader's doing. But then towards the end of the lap, you want him to back off and cool the car down, so the car doesn't get too hot while it's sat on the grid. The downside is that the tyres also cool down a bit, which you don't necessarily want. So that's why you do the burnouts coming up to the grid to get the rear tyres back up to temperature. In the race itself, lift and coast is mainly done for tyre temperature to some extent, but car cooling again. And we'll see an awful lot of that in Mexico, because in Mexico, because the air's so thin, you can't actually cool the car enough, full stop, pretty much. And the drivers almost have to do lift and coast all the way through the race to stop the cars overheating, also for the brakes as well.
Wow.
So this is one of actually the tyre guys that I've worked with always said that lift and coast didn't help the tyres. But my feeling is that they didn't actually fully understand the effects, because certainly Max is the lift and coast king. And if it wasn't the right thing to do, I don't think he'd be doing it. There is another benefit of lift and coast, which a lot of people don't think about, is when you brake at the highest speed, if you brake from a higher speed, the car will dip more than if you do lift and coast. So if you lift off, the car slows without massively dipping, and then you brake, you don't have to apply as much brake pressure to then do the rest of the braking. And that means you can actually run the front ride height a little bit lower. And also it tends to stabilize the car in the entry a little bit as well. So a lot of the drivers do a little bit of lift and coast to stabilize the cars on the corner entries. So that's another reason for doing it.
And that's what Rob Wilson calls gentle firm on the brake pedal pressure. You just pull the brakes before you actually apply them.
Yeah.
Which he noticed in Lewis Kovalainen days, how well Lewis was doing that.
Well, now this is an old story, but Hungary 2008, Lewis was on pole. There was a screw up in the garage before the race, and he didn't get all the fuel in the car that he needed to do the race. Lift and coast was something that we did when we were in trouble with fuel in races, but only typically towards the end of a race. And we didn't really, it was only for that, as far as we were concerned. It was just a way of getting your fuel back in. Anyway, he was missing, I think it was like something like 5% of his fuel. It was a big amount. So he had to do lift and coast from the very start of the race. Otherwise he wasn't going to get to the end, because there's no refueling. Sorry, there was refueling, wasn't there, in 2008? So for the first part of the race, he was going to have to do lift and coast. Otherwise, he was going to have to stop too early. So he did that, and his pace was phenomenal. He set off, and he just pulled out a huge lead. And then it got later in the race, and Heikki was struggling. Heikki couldn't match the pace at all. Later in the race, when he got his fuel back on target, he started to push, and he had about 2 quick laps, and then he started going slower than he was before. And it was very obvious. That was when we twigged that lift and coast cooled your tyres.